In the spring of 2025, something remarkable happened on Capitol Hill. Not a breakthrough in UAP transparency, but a fracture. A congressional effort emerged not to expand government investigation into unidentified anomalous phenomena, but to shut down the very office created to investigate them. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, the Pentagon's flagship UAP investigation body, became a target. Not from skeptics who dismissed the phenomenon, but from the very lawmakers and advocates who once championed government transparency on the issue. At the same time, a quiet but pointed bureaucratic confrontation unfolded between a senior Senate aide and the executive branch over a Trump-era UAP directive, and the bipartisan UAP Caucus, once a rare symbol of cross-aisle cooperation, began showing signs of irrelevance. This is a story about what happens when the machinery of disclosure turns against itself. To understand why Congress might kill AARO, you need to understand the office's troubled history. AARO was established through the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2022, signed into law in December 2021, with a mandate to be the central node for detecting, identifying, and attributing anomalous objects across all domains: air, sea, space, and transmedium. Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, a career intelligence physicist, became its first director. But by December 2023, Kirkpatrick resigned, later writing an op-ed in Scientific American, in which he stated that Congress and a small group of conspiracy-minded individuals had made the job untenable. He accused certain lawmakers of preferring sensational narratives to the scientific process. His successor, John Kozlowski, took over in mid-2024 and attempted a quieter, more methodical approach. But the damage was done. Whistleblower David Grush had testified before Congress in July 2023 that AARO was, in his view, not being given access to the very programs it was supposed to oversee. The trust deficit between Congress and the office became a chasm. By early 2025, multiple congressional sources indicated that draft legislative language was circulating to either defund, restructure, or outright dissolve AARO. Reporting from Liberation Times and the oversight-focused outlet Ask a Poll indicated that certain members of the House Oversight Committee and aligned Senate offices were exploring these options as part of the FY 2026 NDAA cycle. The rationale, according to those pushing the effort, was straightforward. AARO had failed its core mission. Its two major historical reports, Volume 1, released in March 2024, concluded that there was no evidence of extraterrestrial technology in U.S. government possession. Critics, including Representatives Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna, called the report a whitewash. Burchett told reporters plainly, "AARO is the cover-up. You don't reform it. You replace it." The counter-argument is equally direct. Without AARO, there is no centralized mechanism for military personnel to report anomalous encounters with legal protection. Killing AARO without a replacement could set UAP transparency back a decade. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York has been one of the most consequential figures in the UAP legislative landscape. She co-authored the original amendment establishing AARO and has repeatedly used her position on the Armed Services Committee to demand compliance from the Pentagon. In early 2025, reporting from multiple sources, including journalist Matt Laszlo, indicated that a senior Gillibrand aide pushed back sharply against a Trump administration UAP-related executive directive, reportedly an effort to consolidate UAP investigation authorities under direct White House or intelligence community control, potentially bypassing congressional oversight mechanisms. The concern from Gillibrand's office, according to sources familiar with the exchange, was jurisdictional. Congress had written AARO into law. Any executive action that restructured UAP investigation without legislative input was seen as an overreach, regardless of whether the stated goal was more transparency or less. One source characterized the aide's position as, "You don't get to rewrite our statute with a memo." This tension reflects a deeper constitutional friction that transcends the UAP issue itself. The specifics of the Trump administration's UAP-related directive remain partially opaque. In early 2025, multiple outlets reported that the administration was considering or had already issued internal guidance related to how UAP-related intelligence would be handled, potentially shifting authority toward the Director of National Intelligence or a newly designated Special Access Program review body. This tracked with broader Trump administration moves to centralize executive authority and reduce what allies characterized as bureaucratic redundancy. In the UAP space, some disclosure advocates initially welcomed executive involvement, the theory being that a president willing to cut through classification barriers could accelerate transparency faster than any congressional committee. But the reaction from Capitol Hill was mixed. If the executive branch could unilaterally restructure UAP oversight, it could also unilaterally restrict it. Gillibrand's office was not alone in raising alarms. Staff from the Senate Intelligence Committee and certain House Armed Services members reportedly expressed similar concerns, though few did so publicly. The bipartisan UAP Caucus, once a beacon for disclosure advocates, entered 2025 with diminished momentum. Formed with energy coming out of the July 2023 Grush hearing, the caucus initially drew attention from members across the aisle, Representatives Tim Burchett, Anna Paulina Luna, Jared Moskowitz, and others. But by mid-2025, the caucus had held no major public hearings in months. Several original members had shifted focus to other legislative priorities. The caucus faced the fundamental problem of all congressional caucuses. They have no subpoena power, no budget authority, and no mechanism to compel the executive branch to do anything. Moskowitz, one of the more active Democratic members, acknowledged the challenge in a social media exchange, noting that without committee jurisdiction, the caucus could raise awareness but not force compliance. The investigative energy that once drove headlines had dispersed into individual member offices, pursuing separate, often uncoordinated, lines of inquiry. The result was a fragmented landscape. No single congressional entity owned the UAP issue. Step back from the personalities and the politics, and a structural problem becomes visible. UAP oversight in the United States government is spread across at least 6 major entities with overlapping, sometimes contradictory, mandates. AARO reports to the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, but is supposed to coordinate with the intelligence community. The Senate Armed Services Committee wrote AARO into law. The Senate Intelligence Committee claims jurisdiction over the intelligence dimensions. The House Oversight Committee conducted the most visible hearings. The Intelligence Community Inspector General received Grush's original complaint. No one is in charge, and when no one is in charge, everyone can claim the other entity is the obstacle. The Pentagon points to classification restrictions imposed by the intelligence community. Intelligence officials point to congressional inaction on the Schumer Rounds UAP Disclosure Act, which was effectively gutted in the FY 2024 NDAA conference. Congress points to executive branch stonewalling. This institutional incoherence is not a bug in the system. For those who wish to keep UAP information restricted, it functions precisely as designed. If AARO is dissolved without a successor entity, the practical consequences are significant. Military aviators, satellite operators, and intelligence analysts currently have a designated, legally protected channel to report anomalous encounters. Remove that channel, and you return to the pre-2017 environment, where reporting a UAP sighting was a career risk with no institutional upside. AARO, for all its flaws, also maintains the only publicly acknowledged government database of UAP reports. Its mandate requires periodic reporting to Congress. Eliminating the office eliminates the reporting requirement. Some advocates argue that a new entity, perhaps one modeled on the Schumer-Rounds concept of an independent commission with subpoena power, would be superior. That may be true in theory, but legislative timelines are long. The gap between killing AARO and standing up a replacement could be years. In that gap, institutional memory is lost, reporting pipelines close, and the bureaucratic status quo, secrecy by default, reasserts itself. The political infighting over AARO, executive directives, and caucus relevance can obscure what's actually at stake. In December 2023 and January 2024, Langley Air Force Base experienced weeks of unexplained drone incursions over restricted airspace. The incidents prompted a multi-agency response and remain officially unresolved. These are not abstract policy questions. They are national security events demanding a functional investigative apparatus. Whether the objects are foreign adversary technology, novel atmospheric phenomena, or something genuinely unknown, the answer matters. And right now, the government's capacity to find that answer is being degraded, not by external threats, but by internal political fracture. The question facing Congress is not whether AARO is perfect. It isn't. The question is whether the political will exists to build something better, or whether disclosure will die not from conspiracy, but from institutional paralysis and simple neglect. The FY 2026 National Defense Authorization Act markup will be the critical inflection point. That process, unfolding through the summer and fall of 2025, will determine whether AARO survives, is restructured, or is replaced. It will determine whether any version of the Schumer-Rounds disclosure framework is revived. Watch for three things. First, whether Gillibrand and her allies can reassert congressional authority over UAP oversight against executive branch consolidation. Second, whether the House produces any coherent UAP legislation or remains fragmented across competing committees. And third, perhaps most importantly, whether any new whistleblowers emerge with testimony specific enough to force action. The machinery of disclosure has not stopped, but it is grinding against itself. And in Washington, friction without direction eventually produces only heat, never light.